What happens when one of music's biggest legends goes head-to-head with television's most polarizing host? You won't believe what unfolds when Cher sits down with Joy Behar on The View, only to find herself trapped in a verbal battleground that spirals completely out of control. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how quickly things can explode when egos collide and boundaries are crossed. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two powerhouse personalities clash in what becomes one of the most shocking confrontations in daytime television history. Last night's episode of The View was supposed to showcase Cher promoting her upcoming memoir and reflecting on her legendary career spanning over 5 decades. Instead, viewers witnessed something far more explosive. A heated exchange that began with subtle jabs and escalated into a full-blown confrontation that left the studio audience stunned and social media buzzing with disbelief. The tension was palpable from the moment Cher walked onto the set. While the other co-hosts greeted her with warm smiles and genuine enthusiasm, Joy Behar's demeanor seemed distinctly different. There was something in her expression, a barely concealed smirk that suggested she had an agenda beyond the typical promotional interview. Cher, resplendent in a flowing black ensemble that perfectly captured her timeless elegance, settled into her chair with the confidence of someone who had navigated countless interviews throughout her storied career. "Welcome back to The View, Cher," Joy began, her voice carrying an edge that immediately caught the attention of viewers who know her well. "It's always interesting having you here because you're not afraid to speak your mind, are you?" Cher's eyebrows raised slightly at the pointed opening. "Well, Joy, I've never been one to bite my tongue when it comes to things I believe in. I think that's what people appreciate about authenticity." "Authenticity," Joy repeated, drawing out the word with a tone that suggested she found something amusing about Cher's response. "That's fascinating coming from someone who's reinvented herself so many times over the years. I mean, from folk singer to variety show host to Academy Award winner to pop icon. Some might say that's the opposite of authentic." The other co-hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances. This wasn't the friendly, celebratory tone they had expected for what should have been a feel-good segment about Cher's incredible achievements and upcoming projects. Cher's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly, but her voice remained measured. "I think growth and evolution are part of being human, Joy. I've been fortunate enough to explore different aspects of my creativity throughout my career. Each phase has been genuine to who I was at that moment in my life." Joy leaned forward, her expression sharpening. "But don't you think there's something calculated about always managing to stay relevant, decade after decade? I mean, the timing of your career moves has been remarkably convenient, hasn't it?" The studio audience began to murmur, sensing that this exchange was veering into uncomfortable territory. Cher's famous composure showed the first signs of strain as she processed what felt less like an interview and more like an interrogation. "Calculated," Cher's voice carried a note of incredulity. "Joy, I've been in this business since I was 17 years old. I've made decisions based on passion, creativity, and sometimes just survival. If staying power in this industry was easy or calculated, everyone would have it." "Well, let's talk about some of those decisions," Joy pressed on, completely ignoring the growing tension in the room. "Your relationships, for instance. You've had quite a few high-profile romances over the years. Some people might say you've used those relationships to maintain your place in the spotlight." The question landed like a bombshell. The other co-hosts looked mortified, and several audience members audibly gasped. This was crossing a line that most seasoned interviewers would never approach, especially with a guest of Cher's stature and the deeply personal nature of the implication. Cher's eyes flashed with something dangerous. "Excuse me? I'm just saying," Joy continued, seemingly oblivious to or deliberately ignoring the warning signs. "Your romantic life has always been very public, very strategic in terms of timing and the men involved. There's a pattern there that some observers have noted." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. Cher sat perfectly still for a moment, her legendary self-control being tested in ways that few had ever dared. When she finally spoke, her voice was deadly quiet. "Joy, I came here today as a professional courtesy to promote my book and share some stories with your audience. I didn't come here to have my personal life dissected by someone who clearly has some kind of agenda. But Joy wasn't backing down. In fact, she seemed energized by Cher's obvious discomfort. I don't have an agenda, Cher. I'm just asking the questions that people are thinking. Isn't that what good journalism is about? Good journalism? Cher's voice rose slightly, her famous composure finally showing real cracks. Is that what you call this ambush? Joy's lips curled into what could barely pass for a smile, but her eyes remained cold and calculating. An ambush? Cher, these are legitimate questions about your public persona. If you can't handle basic scrutiny about your career choices and personal decisions, maybe you shouldn't be writing tell-all memoirs. The other co-hosts were practically frozen in their seats, unsure whether to intervene or let this train wreck continue. Whoopi Goldberg cleared her throat uncomfortably, attempting to steer the conversation back to safer ground. Maybe we should talk about the book itself, Cher. What inspired you to write it now? But Joy wasn't having it. She waved off Whoopi's attempt at damage control with a dismissive gesture. No. I think we're getting to the heart of something important here. Cher, you've built an entire brand around being this strong, independent woman. But looking at the timeline of your relationships and career moves, it seems like you've always needed a man to validate your next phase. Sonny for your early career, then Greg Allman during your rock phase, then various other high-profile relationships, timed perfectly with career transitions. The studio fell silent, except for the uncomfortable shifting of audience members who couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Cher's hands gripped the arms of her chair so tightly that her knuckles went white. Her voice, when it came, was dangerously low. You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, Joy. None whatsoever. Don't I? Joy shot back, leaning forward aggressively. I've been watching your career for decades. The pattern is pretty clear to anyone who's paying attention. You use relationships as stepping stones, and when they stop serving your career, you move on. It's actually quite clever, if calculated. That was the moment something snapped inside Cher. The legendary performer who had faced down critics, survived industry upheavals, and reinvented herself countless times, finally reached her breaking point. She stood up abruptly, towering over the seated Joy with an imposing presence that filled the entire studio. How dare you? Cher's voice cut through the air like a blade. How dare you reduce my entire life, my relationships, my career, to some kind of calculated game plan? You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through, what I've sacrificed, or what I've had to overcome. Joy seemed momentarily taken aback by the intensity of Cher's reaction, but her ego wouldn't let her back down. I'm just calling it like I see it, Cher. Your autobiography is going to make millions because people love the drama of your love life. Don't act like it's not part of your brand. My brand? Cher's voice cracked with emotion and fury. My brand is surviving in an industry that has tried to destroy women like me from day one. My brand is fighting for causes I believe in, supporting my children, and giving everything I have to my art, my relationships. The real ones. The painful ones. The beautiful ones. They're not marketing strategies. They're my life. The cameras were rolling, capturing every moment of this extraordinary breakdown of professional decorum. Joy, perhaps sensing she had pushed too far but unable to stop herself, pressed on with reckless abandon. But you have to admit, the timing is always interesting. The younger men, the musicians, the actors, they all seem to coincide with whatever image you're trying to project at the time. It's like you're always auditioning for your next reinvention through your romantic choices. The other co-hosts were now visibly distressed. Sarah Haynes had her hand over her mouth in shock, while Alyssa Farah Griffin looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. The audience was completely silent, witnessing what felt like a career-ending moment for someone, though it wasn't clear yet who would suffer the most damage. Cher's eyes blazed with an intensity that reminded everyone why she had commanded stages and screens for over 50 years. You want to talk about reinvention, Joy? Let's talk about how you've reinvented yourself as some kind of hard-hitting journalist, when really you're just a bitter woman tearing down other women for ratings. Joy's face flushed red. Bitter? I'm bitter? That's rich, coming from someone who can't maintain a relationship past its expiration date. At least I've had real relationships. Cher shot back, her voice now carrying across the entire studio. At least I've put myself out there, loved deeply, been vulnerable, been human. What have you done besides sit behind this desk and judge everyone else's choices? The confrontation had crossed every possible line of professional courtesy. What started as an inappropriate interview had devolved into a personal attack from both sides, with Joy's relentless provocation finally breaking through Cher's legendary composure and unleashing a fury that no one in that studio was prepared to handle. Joy stood up as well, matching Cher's aggressive posture. I've built a career on asking tough questions and holding celebrities accountable for their actions. If you can't handle that level of scrutiny, maybe you should stick to performing and stay out of the memoir business. Accountable? Cher's laugh was bitter and harsh. You're not holding anyone accountable, Joy. You're assassinating character for entertainment. There's a difference between journalism and whatever this sadistic performance is supposed to be. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Joy's face contorted with rage. She had clearly expected Cher to crumble under her aggressive questioning, not fight back with equal ferocity. The veteran talk show host, used to controlling every aspect of her show, found herself facing an opponent who refused to be intimidated. Sadistic? Joy's voice reached a pitch that made several audience members wince. I'm doing my job. I'm asking the questions that real journalists ask, not lobbing softball questions like some sycophantic entertainment reporter. Cher stepped closer to Joy, her towering presence making the host look small and petty by comparison. Your job is supposed to be hosting a talk show, not conducting a public execution. There's a reason you're stuck behind this desk instead of doing real investigative work, Joy. Real journalists have integrity. The insult hit its mark. Joy's carefully constructed professional facade finally cracked completely, revealing the petty jealousy and resentment that had been driving her attacks from the beginning. Integrity? That's hilarious coming from someone who's made a career out of playing victim while manipulating every man who's ever gotten close to her. The studio gasped collectively. Even by the View's standards of heated exchanges, this had crossed into uncharted territory of personal cruelty. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of this spectacular implosion of professionalism. Cher's eyes narrowed to slits. There at Island, the real Joy Behar, not the journalist, not the tough interviewer, just a bitter, jealous woman who can't stand seeing other women succeed without tearing them down. I'm not jealous of anything about you, Joy screamed, completely losing control. I'm just tired of watching you play the same games over and over while everyone pretends you're some kind of feminist icon. Games? Cher's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than her earlier shouting. The only game being played here is your pathetic attempt to build your reputation by destroying mine. But you picked the wrong target, Joy. I've been through worse than anything you could ever dish out. Whoopi finally found her voice and stood up, trying desperately to regain control of the situation. Ladies, I think we need to take a break here. This has gotten way out of hand. But Joy wasn't finished. Her desperation to land one final devastating blow overrode any remaining professional judgment. Oh, please, Cher. Don't act like you're above it all. Your entire career has been built on controversy and drama. The failed marriages, the public breakdowns, the constant need for attention. It's all one big performance. That was the moment Cher reached her absolute breaking point. The insult to her professionalism, her relationships, and her entire life's work crystallized into a moment of pure, righteous fury that would be talked about for years to come. You know what, Joy? Cher's voice became eerily calm, which somehow made her words even more devastating. I came here today to promote my book and share some stories with your audience. I thought I was dealing with a professional. Instead, I find myself being attacked by someone whose greatest claim to fame is being the most unlikable person on a panel show. Joy's mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air, clearly not expecting such a direct and brutal assessment of her career and persona. Cher continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. You want to talk about patterns? Let's talk about your pattern of attacking successful women while hiding behind the pretense of journalism. You've built your entire career on being mean-spirited and calling it honest. That's not courage, Joy. That's cowardice. The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Every person present knew they were witnessing something unprecedented, a complete and total dismantling of a talk show host by her own guest. I've spent 5 decades in this business, Cher said, gathering her purse and preparing to leave. I've worked with legends, I've won awards, I've sold millions of records, and I've earned the respect of my peers. What have you accomplished besides making people uncomfortable in their own living rooms? Joy finally found her voice, but it came out as a desperate croak. You can't just leave. We're live. Cher turned back to face her one final time, and her smile was absolutely devastating in its coldness. Watch me. With that, the music legend turned on her heel and walked toward the exit. The other co-host sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to stop her or let her go. The audience was completely transfixed, witnessing television history in the making. As Cher reached the edge of the set, she paused and looked directly into the camera. To anyone watching who might be going through their own struggles with bullies, whether it's in school, at work, or apparently on national television, don't let them break you down. Stand up for yourself, have dignity, and know when to walk away from toxic situations. Her final words were delivered with the same commanding presence that had made her a star for over 50 years. Then, without another glance at Joy or the other hosts, Cher walked off the set and out of the studio, leaving behind a wake of stunned silence and one of the most shocking confrontations in daytime television history. Joy remained standing at her desk, her face a mixture of rage and humiliation, finally understanding that her attempt to destroy Cher had instead exposed her own character flaws to millions of viewers. The other hosts exchanged worried glances, knowing they would have to somehow salvage the remainder of the show after witnessing their colleagues' complete professional meltdown. As the studio doors closed behind Cher, the legendary performer had once again proven that she was a survivor, someone who wouldn't be intimidated or broken down by anyone, not even on live television. The confrontation was over, but its impact would resonate for years to come.